Mark Zanetto of Locked On UConn. If the rumors are true, so again, we've used the word imminent here. It's imminent that UConn will come into the Big 12. I go back to the ESPN article from 2023 where Brett Yormark says verbatim to Andrew Marchand, I did have conversations with UConn and Gonzaga, and unfortunately things didn't work out only because of the dream scenario unfolded for us. So those conversations are no longer. Now, a year later, now that those 4 schools in the Pac-12 have been added, it seems as though the rumor mill in the last 6-8 months is that UConn and Gonzaga are back in the fold. You don't host Locked On Zags. You're here representing Locked On UConn, but it feels like from a lot of the reports, that's a package deal. In expansion, you've usually got to have a buddy, a partner. Is that partner Gonzaga?
Yeah, I believe it would be. In particular, when you start talking about the revenue that UConn brings just on basketball and how Yormark doesn't really care whether football is a part of the mix. So they're not going to pair with Oregon State. They're not going to pair with Washington State. That's just not going to be their partner in crime here. I think, if there is a basketball power that's never won a national championship right now, it's Gonzaga. And UConn and Gonzaga are intrinsically linked from 1999, where that 99 team that UConn made the Final Four and won, that was their first Final Four. It was also our emergence of Gonzaga in that Elite Eight. They were a 10 seed. Dan Munson brings them on this, historic ride. And that was the beginning of the Mark Few era. And it was the kind of the coronation of Jim Calhoun kind of getting what people always knew, that he was a great coach, and getting to his first Final Four and then eventually his national championship. So I think there's too much symmetry there to kind of not have the two of them join a conference together. And it's also two schools where basketball is king. There's no, we call our place the basketball capital of the world. I would imagine they feel pretty similar in Spokane.
The ACC looks shaky, rocky at best, with Clemson and Florida State suing. They're likely going to leave the league. And from there, Duke and North Carolina and Virginia and a lot of the power schools want to be on the table, want to play their hands somewhere else. Is there a way in which UConn hitches its wagon to a Duke, hitches its wagon to maybe a North Carolina? That's a much bigger brand. North Carolina is huge because of the Jordan brand, but one of those ACC schools helps segue UConn into the Big 12.
I could see Duke, and I know our fans will hate that because our fans hate Duke fans, and I don't blame them. But it's one of those things where if we're talking a partner that makes a lot of sense, you can't really hitch your wagon to North Carolina unless you're bringing State with them. It's because it's a state school, like it's the North Carolina institution. You're not gonna. I don't think Carolina's going to a conference without making a deal with State. So I think there could be a scenario where they hitch it to Duke. I don't know if there's kind of like a possibility to have even more people go to the Big 12. I just don't see it more than them hitching with one partner. And I think it's Duke. If we're going to add an ACC school versus a Gonzaga, a WCC school, I think that would make more sense. I kind of would stick my nose up at it because it's kind of like making a deal with the devil, no pun intended. But yeah, I would see Duke over Carolina there.
Given the option, if you're the Big 12, let's make you the Big 12 commissioner for a second.
Okay.
Given the option, UConn is on the table with Gonzaga. That's a package deal. And you find out, hey, the ACC is falling apart, and NC State is there, and Duke is there, and maybe you could get Syracuse. You probably are out of the range. North Carolina, Virginia feel like Big Ten programs based on their AAU status and where they're looking to go. But, hey, Miami's here, and they bring the football aspect. How does UConn separate itself from some of those brands that carry a lot of weight in both football and basketball?
I don't know if my fan base will be excited about this, but I don't think they do. And I say that just from if we're talking dollars and cents, would you say UConn made a profit of $24 million on their basketball program?
Yeah,
that's amazing. But the fact that Syracuse made $10 million more, and Syracuse is terrible at basketball at this point.
This was those 2022 numbers when Syracuse even then wasn't great, right?
So it's. Money talk, we can't curse on the show, but money talks and other things walk. So it's one of those things where like it doesn't make sense. It makes sense in the value perspective of, creating one kind of, or not one, because they'd be a part of now a basketball power conference, but kind of bringing the king of college basketball, at least over the last 2 years, maybe over the last 10 or 20 years, depending on how you look at it, to the Big 12, and essentially saying there's irrevocably the best basketball conference in the country. If that's what you want, if that's what you want to create, like you could never argue it now. Like if you brought UConn in next year, and let's say UConn wins a third straight national championship, what are they going to say? You know what I mean? So I could see that being a draw, but when it comes down to, you're just the commissioner and you're looking at it from a value perspective, you're bringing in NC State because they have a top 20 football program. You're bringing in Duke because Duke is a basketball power, plus they throw a top 25 football program occasionally once every 5 years. So you get a little bit of everything from these programs. So, yeah, I mean, I love UConn, and I think the gamble better be about creating a basketball superpower and that the football program is on the come up.
This one's tough. 10 years ago, the university pitched itself to the Big 12, built this entire public domain PDF about how UConn should be a Big 12 school. This is in one of the last rounds of realignment, and obviously the Big 12 balked then. What is different now? Do you feel like UConn has a different power or a different leverage than it did in 2016? Granted, it had still won multiple national championships in the 15 years prior to that.
Yeah, I think it's going to sound corny, but Dan Hurley kind of moves mountains right now. He is the type of guy that is kind of the voice of college basketball at this point. And again, I know my fans won't be excited about me saying, like, when Coach K kind of bestows that upon you in his podcast and was like, listen, you're the guy now. That kind of is, it's like being knighted. Right. And I think that means a lot. And I think if you're the commissioner of the Big 12, that doesn't get you dollars, but what it does is it kind of does. I mean, there's streaming aspects to the Big East's new deal that potentially the Big 12 can add to the mix with having that Northeast connection, and that New Jersey, New York connection as well, that tri-state area. I think there's dollars there that you don't get with Syracuse. You definitely don't get it with Rutgers. People can talk about that all the time, but no one watches Rutgers. So it's like, UConn has eyeballs. You also get women's basketball is never been more popular. And us folks in the nutmeg state would say, what's took you so long? Because there's a lot of great women's basketball teams that have gone through the University of Connecticut. So I think that it's the Dan Hurley effect. You get the greatest women's basketball program that ever lived, at a time where women's sports are at its highest.
Mark, for listeners of Locked On Big 12 that like your work or want to see more of it, where can they go?
Yeah, you can follow us just like your show on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever that is. Just go to Locked On UConn. You can follow me, and you can see the tag here at Mark Sneto CBB, or you can follow both, which is at Locked On UConn. We have an X handle there too, so got to pump up those numbers as well. But yeah, I would love to have any of your Big 12 folks listen to the show, especially if we're maybe coming. We'll see.
That's what I was about. It's for all the UConn fans. When your school's in the Big 12 in 10 days, I'll see that we'll do another crossover, and I'll see all you guys very soon on a lot of Locked On Big 12 shows. This has been and always will be Locked On UConn and Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.